Welcome. In this video I'm going to go over the initial configuration changes I make on Raspberry Pi Raspbian on the command line, and this is the Raspbian Lite edition. I'm also going to make a similar video for the full edition, which has the GUI to configure things, but this will all be command line. So what I have here is I have imaged the Raspbian Lite image onto a micro SD card, and I'm at the Raspberry Pi. So you can see it has the login information here, but if I hit enter, it'll give me a new prompt. The default password is Pi. Sorry, the default username is Pi. The default password is Raspberry. So now I'm logged in. The first thing I'm going to do is change my font size, and this isn't something you necessarily need to do, but when I'm recording the screen it's easier to have it at a larger size. So I'll type sudo dpackage reconfigure space and then console-setup. I'm going to choose UTF-8. I'm going to choose guess the optimal character set. For my font I'm going to use Terminus Bold, and for the size I'm going to use 16 by 32 frame buffer only. I'll hit OK, and now the font's a lot bigger. I just find this easier when I'm doing these tutorials to have a larger font. So I'll clear the screen here. I'll just type clear, and now I'll type sudo space raspi -config. So the first thing you might want to do is change your password, because it's not great to use the default password. So to do that I would hit enter here. It'll ask me for a new password. I'll type that in and it says password is changed successfully. Next we have network options. So here you can change the host name. So I'll call this Pi Tutorial. So you can access it on the network using this name. We'll go back into network options. Here is Wi-Fi. You can set this up. First thing you need to do is choose your country. So you can hit the page down button to go a little quicker through this. I'm in the US, so I'll find the US here. And I'm just using the cursor keys to go through this. And you can also hit, like when I'm on United States here, I press the right arrow button and it takes me down to OK. You can also hit tab. I'll hit OK here, and it'll ask me to enter my SSID, and once I do that it'll ask for my password. But I'm not going to be using Wi-Fi with this. I have this plugged into Ethernet, so I can just cancel out of here. But if you're using Wi-Fi, that's how you set it up. And right now I have a Raspberry Pi 3, and you can use Wi-Fi with that, or you can use like a plug-in Wi-Fi dongle. I'm also using a SanDisk Extreme Pro micro SD card, and I'll put a link in the description of that on Amazon. And if you use that link, it helps me out a little bit and doesn't cost you anything extra. So if we go back in network options, we can go to network interface names. It says, would you like to enable predictable network interface names? I'll hit yes, and then I hit OK. If we go down here to boot options, you can choose to boot into the desktop or the CLI. So this is the Raspbian Lite, so I think it would have to install desktop. I've never actually gone from Raspbian Lite to desktop. I always just use it with CLI. The second option is wait for network at boot, whether to wait for a network connection during boot. So this will wait for a network connection before it boots up. I usually don't enable that. And then splash screen. It says choose graphical splash screen or text boot. So I don't mess with this typically. I'll hit back. Now we have localization options. This is pretty important. So the first option is change locale. So I'll hit enter there. And I'm going to go down to EN for English because that's my native language. And here I have EN UTF-8, and I want that to be EN US. So I'll go down here to EN _ US .UTF-8. Then I'll press tab to go down to OK. And here it says choose the default locale for the system environment, and I'm going to choose EN _ US .UTF-8. I'll hit OK there. Okay, next I'll go down to localization options again. I'll click on change time zone, and I'll choose America, and then I'll choose Chicago. I think would probably be the best. And these are pretty standard on systems. Like I'm Central Time Zone, so I'll look for Chicago. So look for something in here that's pertinent to your time zone. Okay, I'll go back to localization options. I'll hit change keyboard layout, Okay, I'm going to use the default of generic 105 key PC. I'll hit OK here, and it says English UK, so I'll go down here to Other, and I'll change it to English US. I'll hit OK, and then I'm going to scroll all the way up till it says just English US. I'll hit OK. And I'm going through the options I use. Certainly if you have different options, you can change those to what you need. So here I'm just going to hit OK on these next couple things. I'll hit OK here, and now we're back to the screen. So if we go back into localization options, there's also this change Wi-Fi country, and I'm pretty sure this is the same setting that we had on the network. I don't really have never gone into this. I usually just change on the network one. So if we go down here to interface options, we can enable and disable things like the Raspberry Pi camera, SSH, VNC, SPI, I2C, serial, one wire, and remote GPIO. Typically I'll go down to SSH and I'll hit enter there, and I'll hit yes to enable the SSH server, and this allows me to have remote access to this Raspberry Pi. And you can change any of the other options as needed. You can overclock certain models here. Yeah, it says only the Pi 1 or Pi 2 can be overclocked, so I'll ignore that. On advanced settings here, we have expand the file system. So on previous versions of Raspbian, you used to have to manually expand the file system, but it does that automatically now. So I'll leave that alone, but if for some reason yours wasn't expanded, you could use this. Overscan here will get rid of the black bars around the perimeter of the screen. So if you have it plugged into like a television, you may want overscan on, but since I'm using it on a monitor, I'll hit this and it'll say, would you like to enable compensation for displays with overscan? And I'll say no. And it says display overscan compensation is disabled, and I'll hit OK. And I think that will change after I reboot. So I'll go back down to advanced options. So we have memory split here, and you can determine how much memory the GPU has. So it looks here they have 16, 32, 64, 128, and 256. I'm going to leave this at the default of 64. I'll go back down to advanced options. We have audio. Here you can have audio is auto, force 3.5mm headphone jack, and force HDMI. So if you're having trouble getting your audio out of the headphone jack or HDMI, you can use this settings to change that. I'll hit cancel here. Go back down to advanced options. Resolution. So here we can change the screen resolution. I'm just going to leave it as is. Go back down to advanced options. It says pixel doubling. So this will double your pixel mapping. So this will make everything on the screen bigger, but it'll have double the pixels to draw it. Next we have GL driver. So this enables and disables an experimental desktop GL driver, and I don't mess with that. And compositor enables and disables XComp Manager, Composition Manager, and I leave that as. And Pi 4 video output options for Pi 4. I'm on a Pi 3, so I don't have anything here, so I'll leave that go. I'll hit back. So if you go down here to update, it will update the Raspberry Pi, but I'll leave that as. I'll go down here to finish, and it says, do you want to reboot now? And I'll hit yes. Okay, so we're rebooted now. I can log in. I'm going to use the username Pi, and then I'll use my new password. So I'll clear my screen. So this has zero conf enabled by default. So what we can do here is we can ping pitutorial.local, and we're able to ping our own computer. And that didn't work, but you'll see the reason is because I didn't have my eye in here. So I'll do that again. So if you go on a Mac that has the, what do they call that, Bonjour or Rendezvous? I think it's Bonjour now. You can also ping this address, so you can do local DNS here, and Windows has ways to install that too. I'm not completely sure how to do that. So you used to have to install this on your own, but now it comes default installed. So I'll clear the screen here. So we can also SSH into this too, so we can type SSH pi at pitutorial.local. I'll hit enter here. I'll say yes. I'll type in my password, and we're logged in. So of course I'm logged into myself, but you could do this from a remote computer also. And if you want to know the IP address, you can type IP space -A. And you'll see here where it says 192.168.7.174 is the Ethernet address. So I'll clear the screen. Then finally here I want to talk about updating the system on the command line, just the basics. So you can type sudo space app space update, and that will update the package list on the computer. Okay, now you can type sudo space app space upgrade, hit enter here, and then you can hit yes if you want to do the upgrade, and it will download and install all of the packages. Okay, so that's finished now. I'll clear my screen. So if you had any kernel updates, you would want to type sudo reboot and run that. But that concludes this video. So this procedure is what I typically do if I am setting up a brand new Raspberry Pi or a new image on a Raspberry Pi. These are all the configuration changes I make, and then once I get to this point I can configure whatever I'm using the Pi for, if it's a project or a server or something like that. So this might be a little complicated, so if you do have any questions, please leave them in the comments. If you like this video, please click like. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, I'd appreciate it if you could do that. And thanks for watching. Until next time, goodbye.